The rain came down in sheets that October night, drumming on the roof of the fire station like it was trying to wash the world clean. At 2:47 a.m., a quiet cry pierced the silence, soft, desperate, and far too young. Inside a cheap woven basket wrapped in a thin, damp blanket lay a 4-month-old baby. No note, no name, just a weak, hiccuping cry and eyes far too wide for someone so small. That baby was me. They said the fireman who found me was fresh on the job, just 19, and still scared of his own shadow. He carried me like I was made of glass, panicking as he called it in. Police, social workers, the system. I entered it that night without a name, without a history, and most heartbreakingly, without a family. The records listed me as Baby Doe, until a foster couple took me in 3 months later. Their names were Lisa and Mark Harrington, and though they had no biological children of their own, they gave me something far more powerful, a chance. They named me Aaliyah. It meant God has answered. I suppose for them I was the miracle, but for me, they were the only steady light in a world that had already proven how cold it could be. I didn't know I was abandoned, not until I was old enough to ask why my skin didn't match my parents', or why I never got to see baby pictures. Lisa tried to keep it from me. She didn't want me to feel broken, but when I turned 10, the truth came out. You were left, she whispered, tears sliding down her cheeks, at a fire station. No name, no note. We never even knew who your birth parents were. The room spun. My lungs stopped working for a moment. I remember looking at my hands, like they might hold the answers. But they were as empty as the basket I was left in. After that, I learned not to ask about the past. I built a wall around it. School friends, foster siblings. I kept smiling, kept trying, kept pretending that a missing history didn't matter. But every time someone casually mentioned their family, or asked who I looked like, I felt like I was bleeding from a wound no one could see. I graduated with honors. I made my parents proud, and I buried the pain deep, where no one would ever find it. Then everything changed the day I turned 17. It was a stormy afternoon, strangely fitting. The mail had come late, and I was sifting through it when I saw a heavy cream envelope with elegant handwriting. There was no return address, only my name, written with care. I opened it, thinking it was a scholarship or some school letter. But instead it began, "My dearest Aaliyah, if you are reading this, then by the grace of fate and persistence, I have finally found you. My name is Gerald Whitmore. I am your grandfather, and I have been searching for you since the day you disappeared." My knees gave out. I sat on the floor, the paper trembling in my hand. The letter went on to explain everything. My mother, his daughter, had cut ties with the family in her 20s after marrying a man Gerald never approved of. When she got pregnant, she disappeared. Gerald only learned later that she'd had a baby, but by then, the trail had gone cold. I never stopped looking. The letter said, "You are not forgotten, you are not unloved." There was a number, a request to meet, and at the bottom, in delicate cursive, "I've waited 17 years to say this. I love you, and I am so sorry you were ever made to feel otherwise." I showed the letter to Lisa and Mark. Their eyes welled up, but they didn't try to stop me. Lisa hugged me, her voice shaky. "If he's who he says he is, maybe this is part of your story now." A week later, I met Gerald Whitmore. He was tall, silver-haired, and looked like he belonged in a history book, expensive coat, polished cane, eyes full of sorrow and hope. He cried the moment he saw me, not quiet tears, real, shaking sobs. He apologized over and over, even though he had nothing to apologize for. He brought photo albums, baby pictures of my mother, of her smiling, holding a teddy bear, of him teaching her how to ride a bike. It felt like watching someone else's life, except I was in there too. In her eyes, her smile. He never asked where I'd been. He didn't pry, he only told me one thing that stuck with me. Family is not about blood. It's about who fights for you when no one else will. I visited him every week after that. He became my mentor, my anchor. Slowly, he stitched something broken back together inside me, and when I left for college, he paid my tuition without a second thought. We never spoke of my parents again. He didn't want to reopen old wounds, but I could always see it in his face, the guilt of having lost me, and the quiet fury at those who threw me away like trash. Little did I know they weren't done with me yet. 25 years after I was left in that basket, my past would come storming back dressed in greed and armed with lawyers. But back then, all I knew was this. The people who gave me life had vanished without a trace, and the man who had every right to hate them loved me instead. That was the first time I believed I could be more than just abandoned, that I could be chosen. Time only buries the pain, layers of school days, small joys, and polite lies. But some wounds need something more than time. They need truth. They need love. They need someone to look you in the eye and say, "You didn't deserve what happened to you." That someone, for me, was Gerald Whitmore. After our first meeting, he became part of my life in the quiet, unassuming way that only people who have truly suffered know how to be. No grand declarations, no sudden attempts to replace the past, just presence. He would wait outside my part-time job with hot cocoa in the winter and iced coffee in the summer. He would bring old books with handwritten notes in the margins and tell me stories about his world travels. At first, I kept a wall up half, expecting him to disappear too, but he didn't. One day, I asked him why he never stopped looking for me. His expression softened, eyes clouding with something deeper than sadness. "Because I remember the day your mother told me she was pregnant. Her whole world lit up, and then I watched her disappear into something dark. I failed her, but I would not fail you." I didn't know how to answer that, so I just nodded. My voice still failed me sometimes when things got too real. The house on Ridgeview Lane, he lived in a sprawling but quiet estate at the edge of town. It wasn't one of those soulless luxury mansions. It was old, elegant, filled with creaky floors and history. He never showed it off. In fact, when I first visited, he apologized that it wasn't very modern, but I loved it instantly. The fireplace, the library, the greenhouse in the back that still smelled like lavender and tomatoes. He gave me a room there, not because I needed it, but because, as he put it, every granddaughter deserves a space in her grandfather's home. No one had ever called me that before. Granddaughter, it felt like stitching the last part of a word you'd forgotten how to spell. The truth about my mother, it took months before Gerald talked about my mother in more than fragments. Her name was Catherine. She had been a wild soul, always chasing some feeling of freedom that no one could ever pin down. Gerald loved her deeply, but said she had a defiance in her that eventually turned into self-destruction. She wanted to make her own rules, he said one night over tea, and when she met your father, she thought she was escaping me, but she didn't escape, she just got lost. He never spoke my father's name, only called him that man. The way his jaw clenched when he said it told me everything. I didn't ask why they left me, not yet. I wasn't ready to hear that version of myself. The will it was, during my second year of college, that Gerald started dropping quiet hints about preparing things. I brushed it off at first. He was healthy, sharp, funny, but he was also in his 80s, and reality has its own clock. One afternoon, we sat in his study. A gentle rain tapped the windows like fingers. He placed a thin black folder on the table. "Everything I have is going to you." I stared at it, stunned. "What?" he nodded. "Calm, firm, the house, the land, my savings, the estate, all of it." I shook my head. I don't want your money, Gerald. I just want. I'm not giving it to you because you want it. I'm giving it to you because you deserve it, and because no one else does." He looked away then, his voice lowering. "Your mother passed years ago. Overdose. Your father vanished. And if by some disgusting twist they ever come crawling back, this will protect you." It felt unreal. That number, $3, $4 million, meant nothing in that moment. What mattered was the way he said, "protect you." He wasn't just leaving me wealth. He was leaving me safety, justice, a final act of love that echoed louder than their abandonment ever had. Final days, Gerald passed away just a week after I graduated college, quietly, peacefully, in his sleep, with the spring sun pouring through the window. I sat by his bedside for hours before calling anyone, just holding his hand, letting myself grieve, not just for his death, but for all the life he'd given back to me. He'd left a letter for me, a short one, written in shaky script. "You have always been more than what they did to you. You are light, even when you were born in darkness. Be bold, my girl, live well, and if they ever come for you, smile. Then burn them down with truth." I clutched that letter to my chest like it was oxygen. I thought the past had been buried with him. But I was wrong. The letter that changed everything 2 weeks after the funeral. I got a call from his attorney. Something about complications with the will, something about a challenge. I didn't understand until I saw the names. Catherine Whitmore and James Dalton, my biological parents, the ones who had left me in the rain, alive, and now suing me for everything Gerald left behind. Grief is a strange thing. Some days it drowns you. Other days it just sits quietly beside you. When Gerald died, I thought the worst was behind me. I'd lost the only blood family who had chosen me. But I never expected grief would be replaced so quickly with rage. The letter came on heavy paper with embossed gold lettering and legal jargon I didn't fully understand. But the message was clear. You are hereby notified that James Dalton and Catherine Whitmore Alton are contesting the will of Gerald Whitmore. I stared at their names, my body numb. James and Catherine, my biological parents, the people who vanished 25 years ago, the same ones who left me at a fire station like trash. And now they wanted Gerald's estate, $3, $4 million, a house, land, stocks, assets. They wanted it all. And I knew why, because to them I wasn't a daughter, I was an obstacle. The court of blood and paper, the first hearing was surreal. I sat across from them in a sterile room, my lawyer beside me. They walked in like a performance, Catherine in a black designer coat and dark sunglasses, James wearing a smirk he didn't bother to hide. I felt nothing when I saw them, no warmth, no curiosity, just a deep, unshakable disgust. The judge asked them to state their claim. James leaned forward, like a man selling a lie he'd practiced 1,000 times. Your Honor, we never abandoned our daughter. She was taken from us. Her grandfather, Mr. Whitmore, cut us off, manipulated the system, and erased our rights. Lies. Every word, and worse, they had papers, documents they'd forged, painting a picture of poor young parents victimized by a controlling, bitter old man. The judge turned to me. M.S. Harrington, would you like to respond? I stood slowly. My voice didn't shake. I was left at a fire station when I was 4 months old. There was no note, no explanation, just a social worker who gave me a new name and a new life. That man, I nodded to James, never came looking. That woman, she never called. They forgot me before I even learned how to speak. Catherine flinched. Just slightly, but James, he just smiled. I understood then what this was really about, not regret. Not reunion, revenge, because Gerald had chosen me, and not them. The media circus word leaked to the press within days. Abandoned infant becomes $1,000,000 heiress, now biological parents want a cut. The story spread like wildfire. Some saw me as a symbol of strength. Others questioned whether I was denying grieving parents a second chance, as if grief and greed were the same thing. My inbox flooded. People offering interviews, podcast appearances, brand deals, but I didn't want fame. I wanted peace. Instead, I found myself on the front page of every gossip site. Strangers dissected my trauma for clicks. Lisa and Mark, my real parents in every way, but DNA stood by me through it all. Let them talk, Lisa said. You've already survived worse than their noise. The hidden truth 3 days before the final court date, my lawyer found something. A box hidden in Gerald's study, tucked behind old tax files. Inside, letters, dozens of them, all from Gerald to Catherine, begging her to come back, pleading with her to keep the baby, offering her money, support, even a place to live. None of them were opened, but tucked among them was one envelope, sealed and stamped by a fire station on October 15th, 2000. The day I was left behind, it was the official intake report. In it, a woman was spotted leaving the child, me, in a basket and walking away quickly. The report described her mid-20s, blonde, wearing a red coat, that red coat, the same one Catherine wore in the court photograph. Irrefutable, the paper in my hand was heavier than gold, heavier than any estate. It was the truth. The last blow, the final day of court, I arrived calm. I wore a simple black dress, no cameras, no makeup. Just me. Catherine and James looked smug. They thought they had the upper hand, lawyers, noise, drama. But I had facts. I handed the judge the box of unopened letters, the fire station report, the witness description. Even a surveillance photo Gerald had once pulled grainy, but clear enough to show the red coat and the woman fleeing the scene. My lawyer spoke with quiet fury. These people didn't lose their child, they left her, and only now, after a multi-million-dollar inheritance is on the table, do they remember she exists. The courtroom was silent. Catherine's face turned pale. James turned red with rage, but it was done. The judge's voice was firm. Petition denied. The estate remains in the sole possession of Ms. Aaliyah Harrington. As I walked out, reporters swarmed. "Do you have anything to say to your parents?" one shouted. I stopped, turned to the cameras. "They abandoned me once for nothing. Now they came back for millions. All they've earned is my silence." The morning after the verdict, I stood in front of the Whitmore estate. My estate now, for first time without Gerald. The house looked the same with its ivy, covered brick and wide oak doors. But something had changed me. I wasn't the abandoned girl anymore. I wasn't a name on a fire station report. I wasn't a forgotten secret. I was the granddaughter Gerald Whitmore chose not by blood, but by love. And now with $4 million in my name, I had a choice. Let revenge eat me alive or rise above the wreckage. But first I had one final message to send. The letter I wrote it by hand. No lawyers, no threats, just truth, unfiltered and final. To James and Catherine, you came back for a name you buried. You fought for a fortune that was never yours. You lied under oath, rewrote history, and tried to steal from the man who did more for me in 5 years than you ever tried to do in 25. But here's the truth you'll never escape. You didn't lose me. You threw me away. Gerald didn't keep us apart. Your greed did, your fear did, your apathy did, and now you have nothing. Not because the courts said so, but because you earned nothing. I won't be visiting, I won't be calling, I won't be curious. This is the last time you'll hear from me. Aaliyah, I sent it with a copy of the court ruling and a photograph of Gerald and me from my graduation day, his arm around my shoulder, both of us smiling. That image was a truth they could never erase. The gift 2 months later, I made the decision that shocked everyone, even my lawyer. I donated 1/3 of the estate, over $1 million, to build a home for abandoned children, named after Gerald Whitmore. Not a cold shelter, but a real home with gardens, laughter, safety, a place for kids like me. Kids who were left, not because they were unworthy, but because the world failed them. When the story hit the news, the headlines changed. Heiress builds legacy for forgotten children. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the voice, the public statement. I agreed to one interview, just one, no makeup team, no PR fluff. Just me in a quiet room. When asked why I gave so much away, I said this, because money can't fix what they broke, but maybe love can stop it from happening to someone else. I didn't cry. Not once. I was done bleeding for people who never earned my pain, the legacy, the rest of the estate. I kept it, not because I wanted riches, but because Gerald wanted me to live well. So I did. I finished grad school. I traveled. I bought Lisa and Mark, the parents who chose me, a lakeside home. Every corner of my life now held pieces of the people who showed up, even when they didn't have to. And the house on Ridgeview Lane, I kept it open every summer for foster youth to visit, write, paint, and breathe. It became a sanctuary, just like Gerald once was for me. The final visit, a year to the day after the court case ended, I visited Gerald's grave. I brought no flowers, just his favorite book, The Old Man and the Sea. I sat beside the stone, fingers brushing over the engraved words, Gerald Whitmore, beloved father. Fierce grandfather, relentless heart. I read him the last lines of the book. Then I whispered, they tried, but they didn't win. You did, we did. The wind stirred the grass around me. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole. Epilogue. The invitation 3 years later. I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a wedding invitation. Catherine and James's names were printed at the top. They were inviting me. I laughed. Then I dropped it into the trash, unopened. Because forgiveness doesn't require proximity. And not all ghosts deserve to come back to life.